Hello everyone, I'm glad you could join me today at the Earth Optimism Solutions Fair. My name is Jo Chesham and I am a member of Cambridgeshire Mammal Group. Today I'm going to talk to you about how you can help Britain's wild mammals at your home and also out and about. I'll start by telling you about our mammal group, a bit about who we are and what we do. And then I'll move on to your garden. What signs can you look for? And where should you look? And show you what mammal species you could find. Next, I'll move on to what you could see whilst out and about and what you can do with your sightings. I'll give you a bit of an insight of a current threat to mammals and what you can do to help their survival. I'm not going to cover every British wild mammal or each in detail, but throughout the talk I've included some QR codes that you can use a smartphone to load web links for further information. You'll see them displayed like this one, which links to our Facebook page. So Cambridgeshire Mammal Group, who are we? Well, we are a group comprised entirely of volunteers who give up their time to work towards the conservation and protection of Cambridgeshire's wild mammals. We also collaborate with a number of interested parties to benefit mammals right across the county. Many of these interested parties you can see listed below. So what does the Mammal Group do? Well, we work towards promoting the study, conservation and protection of local wild mammals. We inform the public and stimulate interest in mammals through public engagement. We train members in mammal identification and surveying. We monitor and record mammal sightings. We advise and train members of the public in mammal-related matters. Public engagement is important to stimulate interest in Britain's wild mammals. We use small mammal trapping at many public engagement events, such as Open Days, at RSPB Hope Farm, the Wildlife Trust's Wild Weekend, Cambridge Past, Present and Future events, and Cambridge Science Festival. We record valuable mammal records at BioBlitz events around Cambridge, Wycombe, Fen and beyond. We teach children about mammals at Wildlife Watch and Wildlife Explorer groups. We provide training events for a variety of mammal surveying techniques. And we present at conferences like Nat His Fest and the Mammal Society Conference. To conduct our small mammal trapping, we use Longworth traps, which provide a method of live trapping to capture small mammals for identification and then safe release. Traps are filled with hay for nesting, muesli as bait, apple as a source of moisture, and we also add casters, which are blowfly pupa. These provide a vital food source for shrews if they happen to be caught in the traps. Shrews are insectivorous and must eat every 2 to 3 hours. Small mammals are identified, weighed and sexed, then released. The resulting data is sent to the Biological Records Office. Currently, during COVID restrictions, masks and gloves must be worn to prevent any potential transmission of COVID-19 to the small mammals, and indeed to us. Here you can see an example of a wood mouse caught to teach small mammal identification skills to the public. Badger set surveying. Cambridgeshire Mammal Group surveys badger sets on a regular basis, working through over 200 sets we have recorded in the county. These photos demonstrate a pre-COVID training session where we were preparing members for set surveying, looking out for the signs of activity at the sets. Surveying for harvest mice. Harvest mice are tiny little mice that are rarely seen in the wild, but they do build distinctive nests of woven grass at least 30 centimetres above the ground, usually in dense vegetation, as you can see on the left. We employ a standard nest search methodology where a transect is searched by hand covering a 10-metre section for 10 minutes at a time. These surveys can only be completed after the harvest mice have finished breeding, so litters aren't disturbed. We also survey for water voles and otters. In fact, for otters, not only do we take casual records, but we are involved in an extensive county-wide survey that takes place every 5 years with the Beds, Cambs and North Hants Wildlife Trust. The next one will be due in 2022. We deploy hedgehog footprint tunnels to detect hedgehogs. We set up trail cams to record mammals. And we teach skills in identification and survey methods. And much, much more. So now let's move on to your garden. What signs can you look out for? Where should you look? And what could you find? Mammal burrow holes. These are usually quite easy to spot, and a simple rule of thumb, or in fact finger, is that if the hole is greater than your finger, it is likely to be a mammal hole. However, if it is smaller than your finger, it's more likely to be an insect hole. Here you can see a couple of examples of mammal burrow holes, and then on the right a mining bee burrow hole. Note the daisy for size comparison. Of course, larger mammals make much larger burrow entrances, but I'll get to that later. Hedgehog droppings. These are quite distinctive as they're very black, shiny, and have a firm consistency. Hedgehogs are generalists, but the majority of their diet is made up of invertebrates, so droppings tend to be packed full of invertebrate exoskeletons. So how could you encourage hedgehogs to use your garden? Firstly, you need to make sure that they can get in. Provide a 13 cm by 13 cm hole in the bottom of the fence. This would allow easy access for hedgehogs to travel through your garden. Don't use slug pellets around your plants. These are dangerous for hedgehogs, and if left available, hedgehogs will soon clear your garden of slugs and snails. Provide a shallow dish of water. Without any bread or milk, hedgehogs can't digest the milk and the bread has very little nutritional value for them. You can supplement their diet by providing a commercially available hedgehog food or a small portion of dog or cat meat. Hedgehog footprint tunnels. Carol Baber, a Cambridgeshire Mammal Group member, has produced a number of these hedgehog tunnels based on the People's Trust for Endangered Species design as described on the Hedgehog Street website. You can get full details of this and lots of other useful hedgehog information using the QR code below. The tunnels have an A4 sheet of paper at each end secured with masking tape, coated with an ink made of edible charcoal and vegetable oil. The food bowl is located in the centre, so the hedgehogs need to walk through the ink to get to the food, providing plenty of footprints on their way back out. These are a low-tech survey method, but very effective at detecting hedgehogs. Here's some examples of hedgehog footprints generated from Carol's tunnels. Hedgehogs have quite distinctive footprints and can be easily distinguished from other small mammals, or indeed cats that may try to enter the tunnels enticed in by the food. The bottom left photo shows a hedgehog emerging from a footprint tunnel that was captured using a camera trap. Trail cams or camera traps are now increasingly available inexpensively and can provide an excellent method to detect larger mammals. Here Carol has used hers to capture the hedgehogs in her garden. But having a camera trap set up could also allow you to find out what other mammals are used in your garden night or day. Here is one of Carol's video clips to show you a hedgehog in action. Let's take a look around the garden to see where you should look. Walk along the edges, along hedgerows. Are there any burrow holes, any mammal runs, any feeding signs such as nibbled nuts or berries? Take a walk across your lawn. Can you spot any hedgehog droppings, any snuffle holes from badgers, or evidence of rabbit diggings? Have a good look around your borders. Are there any burrow holes there? Any feeding signs? Are any of your plants being nibbled? And then in your sheds and greenhouses, are there any evidence of chewing? Are there any droppings? Are any of your plants being nibbled? Or have any of your seed packets been attacked? If you're lucky enough to have a vegetable plot, these plants there are very attractive to small mammals, but also to rabbits and deer. You may find evidence of nibbled plants and digging and droppings. So now let's have a look at what you could see. Let's start with the hedgehog, an unmistakable British mammal with its coat of spines. A good time to see them is early morning while the dew is still on the ground, or listen for them at night while they're snuffling around for food. They are much noisier than you'd think. They usually hibernate from October-November to March-April, but that is very weather dependent. On warm nights they will often wake to forage for food. Let's move on to the mice. The wood mouse, or otherwise known as a long-tailed field mouse. This is the most common and widespread wild rodent we have. It has a pointed muzzle and large ears, protruding eyes and a very long tail. It has a coat of sandy brown fur with a white-grey underside. Now the house mouse. This has a body similar in size to the wood mouse, but its coat colour is much greyer and more uniform, without the contrast between the top and the underside. It has slightly smaller eyes and ears, and it's found associated with buildings, sheds and outhouses. The yellow-necked mouse. This is similar in appearance to the wood mouse, although much less common. It does tend to be larger, and its defining characteristic is a complete collar of yellowish fur around its neck, hence its name. They are more aggressive in nature and tend to be associated with woodlands. Moving on to the voles. The bank vole. They have a warm brown coat colour consistently all over their body. They have small eyes and ears and a blunt muzzle. Their tail is much shorter than the mice at 2/3 of their body length. They are typically found in woodland, but they do enter gardens and can be seen foraging around bird feeding stations. The field vole, or otherwise known as the short-tailed vole. This is similar in appearance to the bank vole, although it is larger and has a more greyish-brown coat colour. Its ears are almost completely covered in fur, making them much less prominent than in the bank vole. It also has a shorter tail, which makes up less than half of its body length. Now moving on to our shrews. The common shrew. This has dense velvety brown fur above with a pale underside, and its flanks are buff-coloured. They have a long pointed snout, tiny eyes and barely visible ears. The shrews are much smaller than the mice and voles that we have. The pygmy shrew. This is very similar to common shrew, but markedly smaller in size. It has the same dense velvety fur that is darker above with a pale belly. Its key distinguishing feature is its proportionally long and very thick tail. So how about if you live near some water? Or if you're out and about near water? What could you see then? The water shrew. This is the largest of Britain shrews, having a much darker coat colour. It has an almost black colour fur above with contrasting white underside. This colour divide continues along its tail. The water shrew also has a poisonous bite that is lethal to other small mammals. The water vole. This is the largest of our voles, only slightly smaller than the common rat. They are semi-aquatic and thrive by water. The fur colour ranges from light brown to black, and it has a short furry tail. These voles typically live in burrow systems built into riverbanks and can often be seen swimming in the water. The otter. These are large, long-bodied mammals with a distinctive broad-based tapering tail. They have a dog-like face and are uniform brown in colour, except for a pale throat and upper belly. These have a lively, playful nature, both in water and on the land, and they leave plenty of signs of their presence. Now let's think about when you're out and about. Keep your eyes peeled. This photo is a good example of why, because although poor quality, this is a chance sighting of fallow deer that I saw at the side of a field whilst out on my daily exercise. You never know what mammals you might see. The badger. This is another unmistakable British mammal with distinctive black and white markings. The badger is our largest terrestrial carnivore and is nocturnal in nature, so it's often seen by car headlights as it's crossing roads at night. But they are a species that leaves us plenty of signs as to their presence. When excavating their setts, they produce huge mounds of spoil, and around Cambridgeshire with a high chalk content, quite often you can see these for miles. The set entrance has a classic D shape on its back. Whilst digging for earthworms, they create snuffle holes in the ground. These differ to rabbit diggings in that they don't have a pile of tilth and you won't see the presence of any droppings. Their paws have unretractable claws, so the footprints leave claw marks. These claws often need cleaning, so they scratch on tree branches near their set. You can quite often find badger fur caught on wire fences. And badgers leave dung pits where they mark their boundaries of territories. This dung changes appearance depending on what they're feeding on. The brown hare. Similar in structure to rabbits, but much larger. They have longer ears and larger heads. They are well known for their boxing antics, whereby females repel the unwanted advances from males. You may have seen some during March, as they're currently in their breeding season. The red fox, another well-known mammal. It has a rich russet coat colour and has a characteristic bushy tail with a white tip. It's now much more often seen in urban areas than in rural locations, and usually at night, quite often scavenging for food. Fox droppings are quite distinctive. They're pointed, twisted and segmented, often with quite visible remains of hair, feathers and fruit stones, whilst having a strong musky smell. Rabbit droppings are also unmistakable, spherical in shape and scattered often at entrances to their warrens or around their diggings. Moving on to the larger mammals. Now fallow deer. These are a medium-sized deer and are the most widespread and abundant of our introduced deer. The males have unmistakable broad-tipped antlers and they form quite substantial herds, so they're quite easily seen when you're out and about. The muntjac deer, another introduced deer but much smaller and stocky. They are often seen as they are active any time of the day and night, and they even feed along road verges. They also can be heard at some distance because they have a loud bark, particularly during courtship. Deer tracks and signs. The best time to look for deer tracks, well in fact any mammal tracks, is early in the morning, on muddy banks or edges of fields or paths, after a frost or after a snowfall, as you'll get clear markings in the ground. On the left you can see a fallow deer track. These have two-toed prints, around 6.5 centimetres long and 4 centimetres wide. In comparison, the muntjac are much smaller, with small slots at around 3 centimetres long and 2 centimetres wide. Deer droppings tend to be black, generally spherical, and usually deposited in heaps. So what can you do with all your mammal sightings? Well, record. There are a couple of easy options using smartphone apps now. The Mammal Society has produced the Mammal Mapper app. On this, you can record individual sightings of mammals, or you can start your walk as a survey and record each mammal you see during your route. iRecord is another app. On this, you record individual records, but you can in fact record all species in any taxon. Both of these apps are now available on the App Store or on Google Play. So where do the records go? Well, if you're using the Mammal Mapper app, then they'll go direct to the Mammal Society first. You can find out a bit more about these records and the app by clicking on this QR link. Ultimately, all records from the county will go to CPERG, Cambridge and Peterborough Environmental Records Centre. But of course, if you're recording species elsewhere in the country, then the records will go to their relevant record centre. There are 4 basic components of a biological record, and this is the who, the what, the where and the when. Who's recorded it? What did you record? Where did you see it? And when did you see it? So why are biological records so important? Well, it helps us identify the conservation status of species. We can monitor population trends, look at increases and declines. We can measure biodiversity within the county and the UK overall. And those considered common species actually may not be that common. So it is important to record your molehills and your rabbits and your grey squirrels, no matter how common you feel they are. We can identify declines in particular species and find threats from non-native species that are increasing. We also could identify other potential threats to species. One potential threat that Cambridgeshire Mammal Group are helping the Mammal Society to investigate is actually plastic. So why are plastic a threat to our mammals? Well, the most obvious threat is entrapment. You can see from this photo, this hedgehog has got its head stuck in a plastic ring pull top. The consequences are transparent. Our mammals can suffer injury, starvation, increased predation and death. But what about ingestion? So this photo shows a couple of samples of plastic that were found in wood mouse nests. They've been obviously chewed, so the animals have ingested the plastic. What is the consequence of this? Well, we don't actually know as yet. Microplastics have been heavily researched in marine wildlife, but not for mammals. During our small mammal trapping and from members' gardens, Cambridgeshire Mammal Group have been collating mammal dropping samples for the Mammal Society Plastic in Mammals project. This project is headed up by Emily Dempster, a master's student at the University of Sussex. And if you check out the QR code below, you can find out a bit more about her project. So far, she has in fact found plastics both in hedgehog and wood mouse droppings. Unfortunately, not a surprising result, but something that warrants a lot more research. So what can you do to help? Well, firstly, have a look around your garden. Can you create a more wildlife-friendly garden? The Wildlife Trust has plenty of easy ideas of how you can do this, and if you scan the QR code below, it will take you directly to a web page so you can have a look at their ideas. Secondly, you could donate towards Mammal Society Plastic in Mammals research. Any donation would help take this vital research further. You can scan the code below, which will take you straight to the donation page. Please avoid using single-use plastic. We have plenty of plastic in our environment already. And fourthly, please pick up your litter. The majority of plastic our mammals are exposed to comes from litter that's lying around. So not just at home in your garden, but when you're out and about, please pick up unwanted litter. Thank you for listening. I hope you have enjoyed hearing about how you can help Britain's wild mammals, and that this has given you some insight on what you could see and where you could see them. Please take a good look around the Solutions Fair. Check out the Wildlife Trust's Gardening for a Wild Future presentation and the Museum of Zoology's Keeping Our Gardens Wild. If you'd like any further information on Cambridgeshire Mammal Group, please do contact us on any of the methods available below. You can contact us on our website, on Twitter, on Facebook or on Instagram, or indeed just drop us an email at the email address below. Thank you very much.